Live at 5 with Sergeant Dorsey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to do a little house cleaning, introductory type stuff as I await others to join me. This is my regular Wednesday Live at 5, discussing things that have been happening in the news in the last couple of days that have garnered my attention, and things that I think should be of interest and import to you. Hey, Barry and Vincent, thanks for joining me. Cornelius, I appreciate you. I'll say hello. You're flying, Barry? Really? Wow. Hey, Christina. I'm going to say hellos and some shout outs. So for those of you who are bothered by that, look the other way. But I'll spend a little bit of time acknowledging those who take the time to join in. I don't get to do this on my weekly podcast, obviously. Hey, Ezel. On my weekly podcast, it comes out every Tuesday. For those of you who are new to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, you can follow my podcast on the platform of your choosing: Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Google Podcast, and coming very soon to iHeartRadio. As a matter of fact, if you go to iHeartRadio right now, you will see a placeholder where they will eventually upload all of my podcasts. Hey, Roderick, thanks for joining. I appreciate your consistency. iHeartRadio has a placer in right now that they will be uploading my iPods from previous weeks. And then, of course, they will be updating and coming out weekly on Tuesdays. My goal is to sometime between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. on Tuesday Pacific time to go live with a new content on my podcast. And then, of course, every Wednesday we'll do this here live at 5 p.m. Pacific time as well. Hey, Nikki Hamilton, what's up? I appreciate you joining me. Hello, Charles. Sabrina Dominic Brown, thanks for joining, sister girl. My sister in law enforcement, I appreciate you. There are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you before we start talking about the things that are bothering me this week, if you will. I want to talk a little bit about my website. For those of you who don't know, SergeantCherylDorsey.com is my website. And if you haven't had a chance to go by and check it out, please do. My business team did an amazing job putting together my website. We've been working on launching this campaign for nearly a year now. And one of the things that I think is really neat about it, I mean, all of it is neat, but the thing that I'm really excited about, hey, Carl Worrell, one of the things that's really nice on my website is if you go there on the home page, you can actually read the first chapter of my book, Black and Blue: The Creation of a Social Advocate. And in that first chapter, it'll kind of give you a little flavor for what is to come in the book. I talk a little bit about my career, certainly my 20 years on the Los Angeles Police Department as a patrol officer and a patrol sergeant. And I also talk about the advocacy work that I now do. I didn't start off wanting to do this kind of work. This was not my thing. I really wrote my book initially because there was some stuff on my chest that I wanted to get off. I wrote my book on the heels of Christopher Dorner. For those of you who know the story, LAPD officer who was fired wrongfully, he thought had angst with some folks on the department that he felt were responsible for his termination. And then, of course, he went on a killing spree. Hey, Cat Eyes. He went on a killing spree. I don't condone it. I didn't know Christopher Dorner, and I don't condone what he did, but I understood how he got there. And so I just really wanted people to know how the LAPD, and this is not unique to the LAPD, it's not even unique to law enforcement, how an employer can wind you down and grind you down and make you act out in a way that is really out of character. Before Christopher Dorner did that, we heard the term of people going postal, right? There was a bad rap on postal employees, and so we heard that term, and that anybody can snap, anybody can get fed up, right? And so I wanted folks to know how that happens to you when you're a police officer, more importantly, when you're a Black police officer. And so that was the nexus and the genesis for me writing my book, Black and Blue. and it's available on Amazon. And it's also available through my website, sergeantcheryldorsey.com. If you go through my website, you can order an autographed copy, and I will send you one. If you go through Amazon, you just get a book. But I'm really excited that you can actually go to my website and do a little reading and get some feel for that first chapter. So I wanted to put that out there. And I also wanted to talk a little bit because I want to thank everybody who's new to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, all the people who are now following me on Facebook, and all of the people who have subscribed to my YouTube channel. It is bananas. I am just beyond jazzed about the new subscribers that I have on YouTube as well. And so now people are starting to get a chance to hear me speak. And of course, you always have those naysayers and those trolls who have a lot to say. And let me tell you who I am for those of you that are new to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. I'm a 20-year veteran sergeant on the LAPD. And a lot of people ask, you know, well, why didn't you say something sooner? Why are you waiting until you retire out? And why don't other police officers speak out? And so I don't know why other police officers don't speak out, but I'll tell you how I started speaking out the way that I did is because in 2014, 14 years after I retired, there was a spate of deadly police shootings. And so there was really nothing for me to talk about prior to 2014. Hey, Jerry Watson, Classic Kathy, I appreciate you joining me. There was nothing for me to talk about prior to 2014. I mean, I had a story to tell about my own experiences on the LAPD, but I didn't really think anybody was interested in that. That was just my own cross to bear, if you will. And so when things started happening in the summer, specifically of 2014 with Eric Garner in July, 2 weeks later, Mike Brown was shot and killed for jaywalking. And then a couple of weeks after that, Ezell Ford was shot and killed here in Los Angeles by LAPD gang officers. And so that's when I realized that I needed to kind of stand in the gap for these families and talk in a way that they couldn't because they were just hurting. And so when a police chief tried to explain to them what reasonable force looked like and reasonable suspicion and why their loved one fit that description, and it didn't ring true, they really didn't have the words to push back. And so that is why I started speaking out, because I know what it is to be Black, a mother with sons, and I know what it is to be a police officer. And so I understand both worlds, but I really wanted to speak for the families because the police chiefs and police unions were pushing back regularly against them and trying to justify that thing that we know is unjustifiable. And so that's why I started speaking out, because prior to that, there was nothing. Now, that's not to say that things weren't going on. We just didn't hear about it on a national level. And when I talk about the things that I experienced on the LAPD in my autobiography, I talk about real life people. I name names, so nobody can say that I'm making it up or I'm embellishing my story. In the instances when I don't name the actual people, because I like to give folks names, and those of you who know me know that's a sickness that I have, right? So I like to give people little pet names. But you can certainly Google the scenario and you can find out the real name of the real person that was involved in whatever that story is that I'm telling in my autobiography. Hey, Tanya Bobo, another one of my sisters in blue. I appreciate you, girl, for stopping by. So that's what I do in my book, is I talk about real life situations, and I talk about it from the perspective of a minority, and I talk about it from the perspective of a law enforcement professional, because I'm that too. And I understand police culture, and I understand why officers might say a thing, and I understand code talk when I hear it. When I hear a police chief try to say that there was something that happened 2 seconds before the camera started that would explain that. Well, I can tell you that there's nothing 2 seconds before the camera started as a police supervisor that would explain some of the stuff that we were seeing on a regular basis. And so that's how I kind of morphed into this person that I am, this advocate who speaks out for folks who are hurting in a real way. So to that end, I want to talk a little bit about some things that I saw on social media over the weekend. One of the things I'm going to talk about is the town hall meeting that was held in Dallas over the weekend where Roland Martin was moderating, and just how that thing kind of went, and my own personal thoughts on that. I'm not going to get into the right and the wrong of it. Many of you probably have seen some of the live videos that went up on Facebook, and you can draw your own conclusions about who was helpful and who wasn't. So we'll talk about that. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about something else that I saw today. A lot of you there in Texas know Attorney Lee Merritt, and I saw a live video with him and another gentleman by the name, I believe, of Ernest Walker. I think he's an activist there in Dallas, and if I'm misspeaking, forgive me, but I saw the two of them out today trying to find out the name of the officer who was responsible for killing O'Shea Terry. O'Shea Terry is a black man that was shot and killed a couple of weeks ago now. And what happened is he was sitting in his car on the side of the road and he was smoking a joint. I get it. That's not something you're supposed to be doing. It's not really in your best interest to sit on the side of the road with a buddy and smoke a joint. I get that. But what happened after that, when the officer approached the car, was that O'Shea Terry started up his car and he drove away, as you would expect anybody who's sitting on the side of the road smoking a joint might do, right? Because he don't want to have to deal with whatever this officer was bringing his way. And when he started his engine and drove off, the passenger officer, or the officer on the passenger side of the vehicle, fired into the car 5 times, striking Mr. Terry and killing him. And ultimately, they found some drugs in the car and they found a Glock. None of that did they know before those rounds were fired. And so that does not justify what happened, what they found out after the fact, because they knew none of that. That officer knew none of that. And for whatever reason, the police department 2 weeks later still has not released the name of that officer who was involved in that shooting. And so today, and I don't know what this event was, but it looked like there was some kind of a police day. Maybe, you know how sometimes police departments will have a police officer day and they'll bring out the helicopters and the cars, and folks from the neighborhood can come out, the community can come out and meet and greet, and coffee with a cop, whatever. And I saw Attorney Merritt and this Mr. Ernest Walker asking police officers who were there on horseback and on foot, and looked like family members of, or community members at this event, if they knew who shot and killed O'Shea Terry. Of course, I didn't hear anyone give a response. I saw most of the officers turn their back on him and walk away and not answer the question. And so I'm just going to say this based on what I know about police departments and what I know about police culture, and I really am not looking for anyone to agree with what my position is going to be. I'm just telling you that I'm not sure that that was very helpful, because no police department is going to give up a police officer, particularly when you have people going to an event and asking other officers, do you know the name of that officer? They're not going to tell you his name. And I suspect that the police department now may go to great lengths to make sure that that officer's name doesn't come out for a long time. And they could very reasonably cite that activity as concern for that officer's safety, concern for that officer's family as well, concern for their safety. And so, while some may have thought that was a good idea and may have celebrated that action, I'm not sure if that was really the best thing to do. And along that same line, there was an attorney there in Dallas, and I mentioned her last week when I spoke. I couldn't say her name at the time, but her name is Amber Weber Booker is her name. And she did a Facebook Live talking about this whole Amber Geiger, Botham Jean situation from an attorney's perspective. And one of the things that she said that I want to repeat, and I think this has merit, if you will, is that for the people that are protesting there, I understand that this is a very emotional situation, and I understand that you want there to be action. Nobody more than the Jean family wants there to be some kind of accountability and justice. And so if you're not careful, the way this attorney explained it is things like what happened at the town hall meeting moderated by Roland Martin, the people that were going around and confronting officers asking for the name of the shooter of O'Shea Terry, all of those things could be used down the road as a rationale for wanting a change of venue if and when this thing ever gets to a jury. And so if you're concerned about a change of venue and having Amber's defense reasonably argue why they would want to move the trial from Dallas into another county like Kaufman, you understand why Kaufman is not a good place for that trial to happen, or any other locale where it is predominantly white. I believe activities like the town hall, activities like going around and confronting officers live on Facebook as you're recording this interaction for the name of the officer who shot O'Shea Terry is probably not helpful. And so you guys are going to do what you're going to do. But I'm just telling you that I don't think that was a smart move. But, you know, when I talk to folks all the time and I talk about comply and complain, I know it drives people crazy because they say, well, I know my rights. And of course you do. You know your rights and you have your rights. And, you know, I want to say in my 45 voice, I'm sorry, my 44 voice, President Obama, proceed, Governor. Because we know what happens when you know your rights and you exercise your rights. And what I'm trying to prevent you from doing is making your family the next millionaire in that city. Because listen, these police departments don't have any problem paying money when they kill you. They do it time and time again. And they have shown us that they have no problem giving a family 1.2 million, 4.6 million, you call it. But you're not here now, and I promise you that those families who've lost a loved one at the hands of police would much rather have their loved one back. And so while you know your rights, you have to be smarter when you're dealing. Hey, Cheryl Knowles, I appreciate you, sister girl. Corey Pagay, my law enforcement family. I so appreciate you guys joining me because you guys understand what I'm talking about. And I know that you guys, too, feel the way that I do and speak the way that I do. And so I get people all the time asking, where are the good police? Well, I'm letting you guys know good police are here on Facebook Live with me. Good police who feel like I do are here live on Facebook with me. I am not alone. They exist. I just happen to be blessed and have been given some opportunities to get on a national and international platform and talk the way that I do. And so folks know about me, but I'm not the only one. Deputy Commissioner, I believe, Corey, if I'm saying it wrong, type it in, let me get it right. NYPD, retired executive on the NYPD, and also an author of Once a Cop. Be sure and check his book out, which is also available on Amazon, Once a Cop. And so Corey Pagay talks about his experiences growing up there in New York, and then how he overcame some obstacles and odds to get on that police department and then attain the rank that he did, which was that of an executive. So anyway, back to what I was saying is that, you know, at the end of the day, the goal is to get home safely. I want you to survive the police stop. I want you to survive the encounter. And so sometimes it's not in your best interest to have a whole lot to say because you don't know which officer it is that just pulled you over. That's the variable that I cannot promise will get you home safely when I say comply and complain, because when you do everything right like Philando Castile did, you do everything right and you still wind up in harm's way because that variable, that police officer who's ill-suited and shouldn't be on the job is on the job and he's the one that pulled you over. So it just makes good sense to me that you would try to keep yourself safe, get on that officer as quickly as you can, and go home and put pen to paper and write a letter of complaint and create that paper trail that I also talk about that's so important. Hey, Jean Pope, classmate, I see you. I appreciate you. So anyway, yeah, that whole thing with who killed who killed O'Shea Terry, not really sure that was helpful, but that's just me. Before I get into the Botham Jean shooting, I want to talk about another shooting some of you may know about, and this is eerily similar to Amber Geiger in that this officer mistakenly fired upon a lady that I don't know what he thought she was, but she had made a phone call, a 911 call of I think someone being attacked or someone outside of her home. It was an Australian woman who made the call to 911, stepped outside, met the officer, who then shot and killed her. And this officer is of Somali descent. His name is Noor Mohammad. And Noor Mohammad shot and killed this woman back in 2017 when they were responding to this radio call of some kind of an assault or something going on in the alley. His partner didn't fire any rounds, but he did. And so Noor was ultimately fired, and he is facing third-degree murder. Third-degree murder charge and second-degree manslaughter charge in the fatal death of Justine Damon, D-A-M-E-N-D. Shot her once in the stomach, 40-year-old. Now, what's interesting about Officer Mohammed, aside from the fact that he's a black man, and so there's, just like in everything else, there's laws for white folks and then there's laws for black folks. And that's true on the police department. And so sometimes you can get away with shooting somebody when you enter the wrong apartment and mistake it for your own. Unlike if you're a black officer and you mistakenly shoot someone. Now, I'm not justifying Mr. Muhammad shooting this woman. She didn't deserve to die. But he's being tried for her murder, and that's in Minneapolis. Minneapolis Police Department is where he was assigned at the time. He's been since fired. Now, I guess the reason that this thing was such a big deal in Minneapolis is because this was a few weeks right after the Philando Castile acquittal. So that officer had been acquitted in the shooting death of Philando Castile, and I don't know if it was just the police department trying to placate the community and do right by them in filing these charges against Noor Mohammad in the shooting death of Justine, or was it just that this was an easy sacrificial lamb, if you will, and so they were willing to give him up. And listen, you guys understand what I'm talking about, right? Because police departments will do things very differently when the officer is black. We had that happen here on the LAPD. There was a black police officer, and I don't justify the taking of this young man's life on Venice Beach, but it was a black police officer who shot and killed a homeless man on Venice Beach. And in the first time in the history of ever did our then police chief, Charlie Beck, actually tell the district attorney, Jackie Lacey, that he thought criminal charges should be filed against this officer. That's never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. Now, I don't know if Charlie Beck decided that he would serve up this black officer, because he certainly, Charlie Beck, didn't have any problem with the two officers who shot and killed Ezell Ford. When our independent civilian review board found the shooting out of policy, Charlie Beck still was in support and in agreement with that shooting. And he even made an audio recording for our officers saying that he supported them and he stood with them. So again, can't speak to his heart. I'm not in his head, but here's a police chief who for the first time says that an officer should be indicted criminally, but the officer was black. So that kind of stuff goes on. And folks who look like me, who used to do what I used to do, understand that that kind of stuff goes on. So we'll have to wait and see. Mr. Noor Mohammad will stand trial in the murder of this woman who came out. I don't know why she came out her house, but she came out to get the officers' attention and let them know that she was the one that had made that 911 call. Part of the problem for Mr. Mohammad is that there was some history in terms of problems he was having on that department. There were two psychiatrists back in 2015 who raised questions about his fitness for duty. And I don't think that's unlike anything else that we see that makes it to a national level in terms of deadly force. Generally, when something happens and it makes it to national news, there's some kind of history in that the officer has been involved in uses of force before. Amber Geiger was involved in a use of force before she shot and killed Botham she shot someone. She didn't kill him, but she shot someone back in 2017. I don't know how many of you guys know that. Hey, John Jones, good to see you as well. I don't know how many of you guys know this was her second shooting, but it was. Walter Scott, who was shot and killed by Michael Schlager, that wasn't the first time he had used his taser inappropriately. And so I'm of the opinion, and they prove me right every time, that when something happens and it makes it to national news, it's generally not the first time. And so Mohammed had some issues. There were 2 formal complaints that had been filed against him previously, to be fair. He'd only been on the job for 21 months, so that's less than 2 years, and already he's got 2 complaints. And that's not normal, because, I mean, there are officers who go years, careers, without ever being complained against for something inappropriate. And so perhaps if the Minneapolis Police Department had paid attention to this young officer and did him a favor and not let him stay in that job that he was not suited to be in, this lady would be alive. And so there's, that's probably something that the family may want to know about when this thing makes it to civil court, because all of these eventually make it to civil court. And I think that's why so many police chiefs are very careful in the kinds of admissions that they'll make with regards to the use of deadly force. So back to my little friend Amber Geiger. I've been talking a lot about the police shooting and the aftermath, and the thing that I continue to mention and will continue to mention is the fact that I do believe that she was working as a security officer for that apartment complex, which now makes that apartment complex in jeopardy. And I've had some people ask me questions about how could she do that? How could she use her duty weapon if she's working as a security guard? Hey, Ronald Gray, hello. Hey, Joseph, thanks for joining me. How could she use her duty weapon? Well, that's just what we do. And it's not uncommon for businesses to give police officers freebies, if you will, for the benefit of getting free security, right? I mean, when you go to a restaurant sometimes and you see 6, 8 police officers in there, the reason that they're in there is because they get to eat for free, right? Or they get to eat at a discount. And by giving the officers a discount on their bill, we're going to come back. And so you get free security, Mr. Restaurant, and you never have to worry, hopefully, about anyone coming in and robbing your establishment, because you got police officers rolling through there 24/7 for however long you're open for business. If it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to have all 3 watches coming through there to eat discounted food. Not uncommon for apartment complexes to give officers a discount on rate or rent-free. Probably rent-free doesn't exist anymore. We used to, I didn't personally, but I know of officers who did enjoy that luxury, if you will. I would imagine, with times being what they are, you don't get to just live rent-free, but I would imagine you could get a discount on your rent if you agree to be called all hours of the day and night every time there's a dispute in the complex to come and resolve that dispute. And so I just absolutely believe it. And if you haven't heard, please listen to my prior Facebook Live video, because I played the audio that may still be out there on the internet, where the 911 call was made, and the person that made the 911 call, Amber Geiger, is talking to the responding paramedics, fire department, if you will, and identifying herself as security. And also there was a news reporter, and I misspoke the last time, her name is Rebecca Lopez there, and she did a report about the first responding units that arrived, and allegedly their body camera showed Amber's key in the door still when they arrived, is the way Rebecca Lopez reported it for Channel 8 News, ABC News 8. Amber's key was still in the door, according to the body-worn camera. So that sounds to me like what I have said all along, which is she was on-site security, and I bet you that if they do their research, family attorney, if you do your research and your due diligence, you'll find that that is probably not the first time that Amber Geiger was masquerading around in her little police officer uniform, impersonating an on-duty officer while she's working security. Because again, this is not uncommon. And my LAPD folks, you understand what I mean. And any of you who've ever seen, have you ever seen police officers on a movie set when they're filming in the streets and you see uniformed, what looks like uniformed motorcycle officers who are stopping traffic so that they can shoot a particular scene? The way that that's done is it's done with off-duty police officers. And I know this to be true because, well, I did it. There was a time when I was on the LAPD and I had dreams of being a motor cop. And I had the whole hookup. I had the motor boots. I had a police-looking motorcycle. It didn't have any police lights on it. But if you're a regular person and you saw me riding this black and white motorcycle down the street in an LAPD motor officer uniform with my badge on and my Sam Brown on, my gun belt on with my gun in it, you would think I was a motor officer. But I was off duty. I was moonlighting as a motor officer. I was pretending to be, if you will. I'm allowed to do that. LAPD allowed us to do that. And so I'm dressed up in regalia like I'm a motor officer, stopping traffic while they shoot this film. And so that's what we do. That's allowed. And I do believe that that is what was going on. Now, I don't know if they allow her to wear her uniform there. I think personally that she probably just, because she's just a little thing, right? I think that she probably wore her uniform to garner the respect and attention that that uniform presence gives her. Because most people, if they see an officer in uniform, most people are going to abide by whatever order is being given. Most people are not going to be confrontational with that uniform. And so it would be very different if she had gone up to the door in her jeans and a t-shirt and knocked on the door and said, you know, turn your music down or whatever. If there was a problem on the complex or in the complex, someone may want to challenge her and wonder, why are you here at my door? And you better get away from my door, kind of thing. But when she shows up in uniform, nobody's going to say, are you on duty or off duty? We know she was off duty because she didn't have the benefit of a police radio. That's why you don't do police work when you're off duty, because you don't have the benefit of calling for backup. You can't get on the radio and ask for help and have them come and respond because you don't have your police equipment. And so when she shot and killed Botham, she had to get on her cell phone. And she had to call 911 like everybody else calls 911. And she had to explain to them what the heck just happened. What just happened that should not have happened. And when she did that, when she made that 911 call, she told them who she was, security. I'm security. She hadn't figured out in the excitement of the moment to say something different, something contrary. And that's why there's an audio version of her saying exactly who she was and what she was doing in the moments immediately following that deadly use of force. So fast forward then, if you will, to this town hall meeting that happened over the weekend. And so I just saw bits and pieces of it. Again, I don't live in Dallas, I live in California, but I saw bits and pieces of it on Facebook because folks were live streaming it. And I had an opportunity to listen to the district attorney, Faith Johnson, explain to the crowd how they came to manslaughter charge and what she intends to do about it. And the way Faith Johnson, the district attorney, explained it is that the Texas State Rangers were the ones who filed the criminal charge. And remember, Texas State Rangers filed that charge, arrested her for that charge, manslaughter, because Chief Renee Hall gave it to him. because she relinquished control of the investigation over to them. So once she gave it to them, Renee Hall, then they came up with the manslaughter. Amber Geiger was able to stay out of jail for 72 hours because that's a law, that's a rule, that's a policy there on that police department. And that's something I believe that was instituted by the former police chief, Chief Brown. And since he has left the department, I understand that Chief Renee Hall is trying to reverse that policy, but it really needs to go to the council members there because they need to make it law. They need to make it something that can't be changed when Chief Hall leaves and another chief comes in. Chief Hall could say, okay, I'm going to do away with the 72-hour rule. And that's only good as long as she's the police chief. And then once she leaves and someone comes behind her, they could reinstitute it. And so there was someone else, Councilman there, Fielder, who said that he was going to take this to the members and try to make this thing more than just policy, but actually make it a law, that the 72-hour rule for an officer surrendering themselves if an arrest warrant is issued to be no more. So that's where the 72-hour delay in Amber being charged came from. Now, once the Texas State Rangers charged her with manslaughter, the DA, Faith Johnson, her hands are tied. She can do nothing about that. The only thing she can do now is have her investigators go out and do their own independent investigation. And she says in this town hall meeting that that's exactly what she's doing. She described the conversation that we had with the Texas State, that she had with the Texas State Rangers, as being very spirited. That sounds to me like she wasn't really feeling that manslaughter charge, but it was out of her hands. Maybe if she had been able to have a conversation with Chief Hall, because Chief Hall held on to the investigation instead of giving it up, Faith may have been able to have that spirited debate, discussion with Chief Hall and come to a different conclusion, if you will. That's something that we'll never know because it didn't happen that way. So this is the hand that DA Faith Johnson has been dealt. She has her own investigators who are going to go out and they're going to interview witnesses, and I pray that someone will tell them. And for those of you who live there in Dallas, the next time there's a town hall, instead of rushing up to the stage and yelling a bunch of stuff that isn't helpful, ask DA Faith Johnson in the midst of her investigation if she's looking into that 911 call. Ask Faith Johnson if her investigators are trying to figure out whether or not Amber Geiger routinely wears her uniform off duty while she's pretending to be on duty, working in the capacity of a security guard. Ask her those kinds of questions. And what Faith Johnson says she's ultimately wanting to do is get enough information so that when this thing does go to a grand jury, and she doesn't want to take it prematurely because she's only going to get one bite at the apple. And so when she takes her completed investigation to the grand jury, her hope is at that point that she can then convince the grand jury to charge Amber Geiger, indict her on something much greater, much more significant than manslaughter. That remains to be seen. But that is what Faith Johnson says she's endeavoring to do. And so I am going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to take her at her word, and we will wait and see. She also spoke during the town hall meeting with regards to change of venue. And right now, Dallas is where this trial will be heard, unless folks continue to act in a way that is reasonable for Amber to believe she can't get a fair trial, because a judge is only concerned about fairness, allegedly. And if she argues that she can't get a fair trial there in Dallas because of all the shenanigans that's going on the streets, because of all the shenanigans that's going on with folks doing the things that they're doing, that's not helpful, this thing could get transferred to another county. And so don't handcuff, maybe I shouldn't say handcuff, but don't handicap Faith Johnson in her pursuit of justice for this family. Because at the end of the day, understand that Botham Jean's family is the victim. What they want is what's most important. I get that everybody else is all worked up and feels some kind of way about this. Hey, Michael Brox, thanks for watching and listening. I'm asking everybody who's here, could you just take a minute and share this on your timeline? I'm realizing I've been going now for a minute, but if you could just share this on your timeline, then others can hear and see what I'm saying. And then hashtag tell a friend. Let somebody know about Sergeant Dorsey Speaks so that there will be others who will be speaking the way that I do and repeating the kinds of things that I'm repeating here on my Facebook Live. And for those of you who can hear me, let's just do this. Let's just do hashtag stand up for Botham, hashtag tell a friend, right? Because at the end of the day, this is about that family. This is about what they want. This is about justice for that family. I get that you guys are all worked up, and I get that, you know, this needs to stop. I'm with you. But this family has lost a son, a brother, a friend, and they're only going to have one bite at justice. And if this family is not given every opportunity to get this before a jury who can hear this evidence that I think would support that Amber Geiger was not tired, that she wasn't mistaken, that she murdered Botham Jean, then we've done this family a real disservice. We've done them a real disservice. And it's about them. So, you know, while you guys are out there protesting, be mindful of this family, be respectful of what this family wants. I don't doubt for a minute at the end of the day, the Dallas Police Department and the City Council will write a check to the Jean family. This is not what they want. This is not what they want. They'll get a check because there's money set aside for this kind of foolishness when officers use deadly force as a last resort and not a first resort, as we're taught and trained. They'll minimize and mitigate that bad behavior. This officer will live to offend again. She'll go and join another department like Betty Shelby. She may be even rewarded a teaching credential like Betty Shelby, where she can teach others how to get away with murder. And so don't blow the chances for this family to get justice, not money, but justice for the loss of their son. Think about that. Think about this family. Think about if this were you. I say this, you know, in my book. I say, you know, my first chapter, it may not be you right now, and I pray that it's never you, but you might be next. I could be next. Anybody who's walking around looking like I do, looking like you do, could be next. And so you would want others to be respectful and mindful of the things that you're trying to accomplish, that you're trying to get done in the name of justice. Policy changes. I understand that Chief Renee Hall has offered to do, I believe there are 3 things that she has offered to do in the next 6 months. One of them is set up an independent civilian review board. And I think the 72-hour hold for officers in terms of surrendering is also part of that. And I can't remember what the 3rd thing is. But for those of you that are there in Dallas, you know what those 3 things are that she promised. With regard to one of them, the Independent Civilian Review Board, because I had someone there ask me, what kind of questions should they be asking when they talk about this? And we have an Independent Civilian Review Board here for the LAPD, and I'm all for it. But what bothers me about those is that an Independent Civilian Review Board really doesn't have any teeth. They just make recommendations. You know, they can look at all the facts. They may even have subpoena power. But at the end of the day, you know, they make a recommendation and the police chief says, thank you, appreciate that. But I find this shooting at policy, but I appreciate that recommendation. And so it would be nice as police departments are setting up independent civilian review boards, do so that that board has some teeth, so that their final adjudication of a use of force or a deadly use of force means something. Here in LA, when our independent civilian review board found fault with the officers that shot and killed Ezell Ford, they expressed that to then Police Chief Charlie Beck, and he said, thank you. And he found no fault at the end of the day. I don't know what ultimately happened to those officers. I think he, may have said tactically they did something wrong, because bad tactics always lead to a deadly shooting. Bad tactics, something that didn't have to happen. You grab somebody when you didn't need to grab them because you didn't have enough backup unit there before you put hands on them, and now they're flailing around like a fish out of water, and you don't know what to do with them, so you just shoot them. Or because they run and you can't catch them because tactically you didn't wait till you had backup to engage that person, and so you chase them and you shoot them in the back because you can't catch them. Bad tactics always lead to deadly shootings. And so when a bad shooting happens, they justify it, and they say that, well, it wasn't a bad shooting, it was just a training issue, and so now we're going to provide that officer with training. And I don't know what that means. Do they sit down and have a fireside chat? I don't know what that means, because the police chief has great autonomy, and they can do anything from a paper penalty to termination when they adjudicate a use of force, deadly use of force. They have great autonomy over that, and that's why you need an independent civilian review board who's able to do more than just recommend, who's able to do more than just say, hey, chief, I was just wondering if you could, maybe fire this officer because he really did need to shoot that person 15 times. If they don't have any teeth behind their recommendation, then in my opinion, it's kind of moot. So those are the kinds of things that you could be asking when you're shouting questions from the back of the room, either to DA Faith Johnson or to Chief Renee Hall. Ask them about those kinds of issues. I see a lot of you that are here, and I appreciate you coming on. If there's some folks who would just let me know what state you're coming from, because I'm interested to know who's here and where you're from, and if there's any issue in your state specifically that you'd like me to speak to. And if in this little bit of time that we have left, I don't get to speak to that, you can certainly always reach out to me on my website, www.sgtcheryldorsey.com. You can get in my inbox on Facebook. A lot of you now know about my Sergeant Dorsey Speaks Facebook page. So you can, ask me those questions. If you want me to address something for next Wednesday when I come and talk to you, we can do that. The other thing that I want to remind you of, and I'm going to continue to do this up until that date, and that's October the 22nd, just to say that if you are really bothered by what is going on, hey, David in Atlanta, John Jones in DC, great. Let your vote be your protest. If you're really bothered by what you're seeing right now, let your vote be your protest. October 22nd is the last day to register to vote. I don't know how many of you know this. September 21st, I think it was National Voter Registration Day, and 800,000 people registered to vote. Don't know what that's going to mean come midterms, but there are certainly some key races with regards to governors, with regards to police department heads here in Los Angeles. Jim McDonnell is up for sheriff, LA County Sheriff, elected position. There may be others in your state that you might want to pay particular attention to, and so you need to be registered to have your voice heard. I said to some folks who were asking me, why am I doing this now, and what were I doing before? And so I say to you, what are you doing? Are you registered to vote? Because if you're not registered to vote, then you're part of the problem and not part of the solution. So we don't have much to say if you're not out there engaged and involved, because change is going to come when community members get engaged, get involved, go to those community meetings, ask questions of police chiefs and district attorneys who are up for re-election. Faith Johnson is up for re-election in November. Here in LA, we got a DA, Jackie Lacey. Y'all need to holler at her. I don't live in LA County, but y'all need to holler at her. Get involved. Be part of the solution and not the problem. Hey, Eugene, calling from New Jersey, checking in from New Jersey. Too many issues here to address right now, but I'm looking forward to connecting with you and DeLacy. Yeah, DeLacy is good people. If you see him before I call him and talk to him, tell him I said, what's up? Thank you, I appreciate that. I also say, you know, if you got a problem in a police department, I encourage young people to get on it. I encourage you to get on a police department because change is going to come from the inside. You're not going to change police departments by being on the outside raising Cain. You need to get on that police department. Get on that police department and be a part of the solution. So I am going to now say fare thee well. Thank you all for stopping by live at 5 every Wednesday. I want to thank you to all my new YouTube subscribers, podcast subscribers. I'm available on Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn. You can find me on wireless speakers like Alexa and Sonos, coming soon to iHeartRadio. And my book, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate, available on Amazon, autographed copies available through my website, which you can probably see in this thread, www.sergeantcheryldorsey.com. Appreciate you stopping by. Unless there's something that really blows my hair back, I'll see you next Wednesday. Until then, be good, be safe.